Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new video on this new YouTube channel that is completely dedicated to music composition and digital orchestral music production. So here I just wanted to kind of break down a new track I've composed. We're just looking at like a final mix of it. We're not going to break down like the sequencing of it. But I think even so, just like listening back to it, I just wanted to kind of talk about my composition process, listen back through it, talk about creative decision making, and just kind of have a breakdown of, just my creative process for what goes into a song. I'd love to do more videos too, like breaking down the actual composition process as well, and inviting you kind of into that process. But I think we'll start here, just kind of like an overall overview of a track. And so I mean, without further ado, let's stop wasting time. Let's get into it. So I think I'll go ahead and say, I'll go ahead and say something to listen for as we listen to this track. Take notice, I guess, of how it changes as you listen, because this is a track that pretty much as it goes, it shows you how I composed it. And I guess what I mean by that is like, I started composing basically with the first section, and I finished composing with the last section. And I didn't really know how it was going to end when it began. I mean, there's some things that, like, of course, like I go in and like change it as I'm going, but kind of like the broad strokes of it were made pretty much from left to right, starting at the beginning, ending at the end. And so I think that's just something to kind of keep in mind. So without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to, I'm just going to kind of cue up like, maybe the first, like, maybe these bars. Maybe that's a good place to start with. So yeah, just go ahead and kind of stop there and kind of walk through that section. I mean, that's the, this is the first kind of statement of the piece. And from these couple of bars here, it already kind of informs the direction of the piece. I mean, this was the kind of the first thing I composed, was thinking through it. And usually I'm very melody centric, but I actually composed the, I sequenced like the chords first and that harp, that kind of doom, 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 doom. Like I started with that, and then because I knew that that's what I wanted the piece to feel like. I started with what I knew I wanted to root it in emotionally, and then wrote the melody to that. And the melody was very easy to feel out, relatively, once I figured out those chords. But I guess it's like sometimes I'm very top down, like I'll figure out the melody, figure out how I want it to sound, figure out that statement, and that defines everything. But here I knew that the mood was going to be defined by the arrangement, and the melody was just something that could fit into that. And I wanted it to be like a certain way, but it was something I knew I could fit in to a section. So I guess I just wanted to bring that up because, the philosophy of how you compose and when you compose it and what you compose, it should be motivated, at its best. I think that's where craft comes in, is from what is motivating your creative decisions. And for me, the melody was something that was motivated by the overall piece. But yeah, I guess also with that, let's listen to it again, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the arrangement with that in mind. Oh, I just love the sound of a woodwind melody. And yeah, I think I think sound is so important, and I used to kind of feel this way that the sonic aspect is the least important aspect, just because intellectually, shouldn't that matter more, the intellectual component of composing? And it's just not that simple. And even if you really want to be a musician about it and emphasize the intellectual element of a piece, the sound has to work, and that comes in the arrangement. That comes from the technical side. That, you have to use your ear. Has to come from the heart, has to come from the ear, not just the mind. Great music is not only from the mind. It fulfills all of that, in my opinion. I don't know, not to sound pretentious, but I think that, And it's just like with that in mind, it's like, it's like a great song is not just the pure musicality of it. It has to sound good as well. I mean, that's what music is. Those shouldn't be two separate processes. But I guess like just so often they're taught separately, and discussions of theory separate the intellectual component from the sonic component. But anyway, I rambled. The point is like that sound was very intentional. I wanted a very haunting sound. The harp, the bassoons, the pipes at the beginning, it's like a haunting ghost cry. And all this is just like speaks to the inspiration of the piece. And I don't, necessarily want to say too much because I want you to kind of come up with your own story behind what the piece could be inspired by. Comment down below how you feel when you listen to this piece. But yeah, I mean, like I can say at the very least, I wanted a haunting quality to it, and that informed, all of my creative decisions. So let's listen to the next section and see how it develops. So in that section, we see the melody is now paired with several different parts now. How do I put it? Like it's doubled. Like the line is now doubled with, there's now flutes in there. And something I like about that section as well is that so the melody from the first couple measures is doubled, and there's a harmony now with a slightly different rhythm that's being paired with it in different instruments. So it's like as the arrangement grows, it's just growing in complexity. And I think that just I love that kind of format for a piece. And I mean, I think that's obvious. I don't have to say a whole lot about that, but just I wanted to go ahead and point that out, ways in which the song develops as it continues. And so that's basically, that's the A section. So now let's go on to the B section. I know I'm just kind of listening to parts of it at a time. At the end of the video, I'm going to do a whole run through of the song and let you listen to it all at once. I thought it made sense to do that later than at the start. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, yeah, let's now go on to the bridge. Oh, I love that section. I mean, to me, that's what the song is all about, is this bridge, man. Oh, I love it. I love the sound of that. I love those chords. I'm just a sucker for that style. Everyone has their favorite chords, right? And for me, I have several chords, and I love a bridge with that kind of structure. I'm also a sucker for the major 1, minor 4 chords, of course. But so that's just low insight. And of course, this bridge as well, over the course of it, builds also in a similar way to the A section, with the melody doubling as it continues into this kind of second run through of the bridge chords. But the melody also changes. It's not the B section is kind of presented once and then repeated, but in the repeat, there's also things that change in the melody line. And it's, I guess what I like about this piece as a whole are the phrases. And that's something, like I said, it's I didn't compose first with the phrases in mind. I composed with the feeling, and the melody was attached to that feeling. But I do think something I like is just the shape of this melody and how it resolves and how it comes back, and that shape. I'm kind of messing around with my mouse cursor to try to illustrate that. My hands are not visible on screen right now, so all I have is this mouse in order to demonstrate my inflections. But anyway, before we keep listening to this track, I think it's time for a short message. So I will talk to all of you again after the break. See you then. If you want to be able to support me as a creator, there's several ways that you can do that. Become a member on Patreon. It gives you access to exclusive bonus features and early access content in all of my filmmaking projects. Stuff like early access to scripts that I'm writing, storyboards, previs, rough cuts, and music that I compose. I'm a composer, and any music that you've heard in the background of this video was my music. So go to Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to music and type in Joe Kendrick. That's JoeKendrick. Look up Joe Kendrick on Spotify. And we're back. So without further ado, let's keep listening to the track, all right? Let's listen to how the piece develops from there, moving on from the B section. I'm just going to play this measure, I think, before we move on. Yeah, prepping for the key change with the flutes now doing that, and the strings are now like some light kind of strings. And the thing is, like, it's easy for, you know, when I was a younger composer, like, it's easy just to throw in strings, and I felt like everything was better the sooner you added in strings. But now I guess, like, within the past couple of years, I've really been trying to learn patience with strings because they add so much depth. But I don't want to add that all at once. I want to start with, okay, woodwinds and harp, and then add the strings in as needed to further develop the piece. To me, like, you know, like, don't play all your cards at once, even if it's the most beautiful sound you've ever heard. Just be careful about that. And to me, like, I feel like that's pushed me to look for other instruments that maybe I haven't thought as much about, like the flutes and the woodwinds and stuff you can do with those. But anyway, structurally, that kind of measure, or, you know, measures that we just listened to, I thought was interesting because it was kind of like a rapid fire version of the A section. And in order to accelerate into the key change, of course, there's some other changes in chords, but it's basically just like a cut tempo version of the A section with a new melody that, you know, allows it to translate into the B section, which I think is, I mean, I'm not like looking at it and I don't have the best ear, but I think it's basically like the new key change is going a fourth. I don't know. Let's listen to it again. Let's listen to that last section now going into the key change. Yeah, I think that's a fourth anyway, but I love that little like introduction to the key change. That's something I didn't do at first, and it kind of took me a second to realize I need to let them adjust to the key change before the melody is reintroduced. And I love that. Those may be some of my favorite couple measures. And the song there with right when you hear the key change, you have those now soaring strings. No, maybe not quite soaring, but they're flying. That and I'm pretty sure that's we'll listen to it again before we listen to the next melody section, but I'm pretty sure it's strings and woodwinds doubled together, like a flute piccolo and then a first and second violin doing those. And I think those are so powerful. And runs, it's like you have to be careful with runs. You don't want to overdo them. I've talked about that before in like my composing with strings, like BBC SO video that I've already made. But yeah, I mean, let's just listen to that again before we hear the melody in this key change. I like that a lot. I mean, especially that brass for like French horn, do 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 do, before it goes into the new the melody again. And the melody there, it's like arrangement wise, it's nothing we haven't heard before except for the new instrumentation. There's I mean, of course, in the melody in the main event, instead of, you know, woodwinds, it is brass and strings with I think it's a viola and a cello and a trumpet doing the melody for this section. You know, kind of low to mid-range instruments. I mean, the trumpet's playing like it's a high-end instrument, but it's playing kind of at the bottom of its range. And I really like the sound and the texture of that. I'm going to listen to that again. Now let's listen to especially to the background of that section. Yeah, so just right out the gate, I think you can probably tell that in that boom 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 in the background, like instead of just being a harp, that is now a there's several more instruments that have been added to it. There's a marimba and several string elements like staccato, kind of like bowed, like dum 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 dum, and just like adding all of those together to just increase the increase the amount of texture in the piece. Let's listen to the next section now. What I think is interesting about this is that it's harder to tell that the two harmonies are playing together, because like in the first time I did that that kind of like second iteration of the melody in the A section before, you could hear the woodwinds kind of all playing together, and you could hear those harmonies as being more distinct. But here, the most dominant section is the new melody, while the melody you heard from the measures before is now played by a celeste, which is kind of almost hidden in the mix. But of course, like the new melody is being played more prominently by, I think it's either a trombone or tuba layered with the cellos. It's still that like brass and string combo, even though it's a slightly different brass and string combo, just as a way of like, do things different every time. Like, it's okay to have repetition, but each time you repeat something, it should be different. I think music is all about change, right? And finding more ways for a piece to change makes it more musical. So I think, like, let's listen to that, I think, going into the B section again. I just want to kind of hear the last part of that going into the B section. Oh, I'm so excited. This piece really increases in energy here at the end. And this is something that caught me off guard. I didn't really plan this, the way that it builds like this. It's originally just this very kind of soft waltz with these haunting winds. And then suddenly there's this energy, the spirit of adventure, of course, through the percussion, with, it's like a taiko drum and snares, right, together all doing that doom, 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 doom. It's like moving things forward. And of course, like carrying over from this key change section, we still have those strings and low brass in the melody. And now they continue that into the B section. Let's listen to the other elements of that, as long as with, I think, just the rest of the song. Let's go ahead and listen to it all. Yeah, I really like that ending. It kind of almost comes out of nowhere, but it is like a continuation of the piece. It is an increase in energy to the point that it explodes in that final part of the B section there, where like the B section starts with like the background, like harp elements are like that part of the arrangement is doubled in the higher strings, with the do 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 is now getting higher and higher and higher. And then in the very end of these last two groups of bars, the high strings double the melody, and same with the horns. The higher horns come in as well, just to kind of really drive home that just like all the, what's the expression? Just pulling out all the stops, right? Which is a musical expression. Don't forget that. Don't forget that pulling out the stops is literally a musical idiom. But yeah, I mean, like with the high brass, the trumpets, and the strings all there at the end, it's just an explosion of power. And it's like, I could have like done that at the start. I could have started the piece with horns and high strings and the percussion, and right out the gate, you know, and like you can do that. That's valid. But I wanted this piece to show you just kind of step by step, like growing a piece and having dynamics. And you can see just looking at the whole piece, like literally just visually, you can see in the waveform, the amplitude changes. You can see the dynamics there, and they're all baked into the arrangement and adding more instruments to each section. You know, so I think just like with that all in mind, with everything I've talked about, let's listen to the whole piece from the top, with all of those things in mind. So yeah, without further ado, let's listen to it together. Yeah, there you have it. There you have it. I'm really not going to say too much more at the end of the video. I think I've already broken down the track enough for you. I listened to that again, and it stirs my soul, you know, and like, I don't know, like, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I'm proud of this piece. But yeah, and I think that there's several things already that I've talked about that I think help make it work. So I hope that you've learned something from today's video. Comment down below, you know, if you have any suggestions or things that you've learned from composing. I'm not trying to, you know, I don't make these videos because I think, you know, I have all these things to teach you, but I make these videos so that we can learn together. So feel free to comment down below any of your own best practices in composing this kind of music, what you like about the piece, any suggestions you would have for my future work. I accept that kind of feedback. But yeah, I mean, thank you all so much for watching. I always appreciate y'all watching. So subscribe for more videos like this, and comment down below any other kinds of ideas you have for content you want to see on this channel, things you want to see me talk about, any other kind of insight into the music composition process that you would be interested in. Comment down below what more you want to see. So yeah, without further ado, thank you all so much for watching. I'll let you go.